My fellow Americans, this is your fellow American on the Help Me Make Sense of This broadcast. My fellow Americans, I got good news. Since my first broadcast on the Help Me Make Sense of This broadcast, the U.S. household assets have grown by over $1 trillion. We've gotten $1 trillion richer, my fellow Americans. This is while our leadership in this country, the self-proclaimed king and his court gesture, have run ramshod through the government trying to destroy the very fabric of our social safety net. Now, my fellow Americans, I'm going to share with you a little saying that I have adopted. I came up with it over the years and I adopted it and applied it to my life liberally. It's really simple. If people can't control your income, they can't control your outcome. What's going on, my fellow Americans, is simple. Certain, I shouldn't call them factions because they're not, certain powers that should not be in our government are systematically removing from the citizens of this great country the ability to receive money from the government. They want to do away with the IRS. I hope my fellow American knows that the IRS last year paid a tax refund to 64% of people who filed taxes. All right, I'm not a mathematician, but I am okay with numbers. So help me make sense of this. If 64%, let's just round up, 65%, almost 7 out of 10 of my fellow Americans who filed taxes last year got money back. And the average return, what you got back was $2,753. So it wasn't pennies. I was amused when I went out and dug this information up just now. I was amused at the fact that DOGE, for lack of a better term, has had to deconstruct the federal government. Department after department, threaten people every day. These people are being threatened with expulsion, the federal workers. Shout out to all federal workers. Stay united, stay together. Move together. That's the last thing I'll say about that. This could be over very quickly if you move together. However, as it stands now, you're under constant harassment. When they've sold the citizens of this great country, you included, that at the end of all this austere behavior, we're going to send everybody in this country, every person, a check for $5,000. The average taxpayer already gets back more than half of that without everybody having to lose their job that works for the federal government. And this reduction in the federal government, my fellow Americans, has an almost echo effect on the private sector. If you close, like say you close USAID, all the contractors that were feeding up goods and services that had USAID contracts, all those private businesses, which the powers that should not be that are running the country right now say they love so much, they're crony capitalist buddies and budettes. They are cutting these contractors' throats because these hard, factual, they're meeting everything, they're meeting all their contractual obligations to provide the federal government, in the case of USAID with food and services, they're no longer needed. So they have this food that's just going to go to waste. They have this service that they had already, based on the contract they already had bought materials, they already bought packing material, they did all that up front. They can't get their money back. I was called by one of my private contractors this week, and he was telling me that he had some sod, like a couple of 2,400 square feet of sod, that he was willing to sell me at just a pennies over cost, just pennies. Now, if we were in a different economy right now, and we didn't have a bunch of despots, for lack of a better term, trying to decompose democracy and decompose the federal government's ability to exist, I might have pulled the trigger on that deal. It was a great deal. I could use new sod at my new home. But my fellow Americans, I didn't do it. I held on to my capital because that working capital I have right now may be, just maybe, if the powers that should not be have their way, ultimately, those will be the last days I receive that money. They're after everything, to include Social Security and military and disability payments. You're already getting back, my fellow Americans, $2,800. 65% of you are getting back the tax return. The assets of our great nation have gone up by $1 trillion. The household assets, your and my money, has gone up by $1 trillion since I started this. Stay together. Move together. Be blessed. Know that things are not what they seem to be. And believe in your fellow Americans.